Today I have a quick comparison of the Air Jordan 4 white cement. I recently had a video on the channel where I displayed a comparison of the both of these shoes. Today I have a different, more up-to-date version from the first version that I had. And this video is for educational purposes, just to get that out the way. Overall, these shoes look very, very similar, but when we dive deep into the inside, there are slight differences. So we're gonna get both of these kicks to the side and we're gonna take a look at the boxes first. The boxes are the same height. They look pretty much identical when you're just looking at them, but one thing I like to point out is that it's kind of hard for you to see, but usually there's gonna be like a waxy type of finish. And you can see how I scratched the box on the replicated version, which is the box to my left. And when I do that, you can kind of see the scratches on the box of the real, but you can barely see it. So long story short, you can see that waxy type of finish that the replicate box does have. We're gonna take a look at the labels that are on the box. We're gonna check it just to make sure that we have the correct barcode from box to box. So the retail is at the top. And I'm looking at it. We got a 197863038131114 on the retail, and on the bottom, it looked like the numbers are correct on the box. If I am incorrect about that, you guys get into the comment and let me know if I am off or wrong about that. However, when I'm looking at the labels on the box, all I'm seeing, and it's very, very slight, I'm seeing a small font difference, whereas on the replicated box, the text right here, when it gets to the colorway, it's slightly bolder than the retail. Something that's very, very slight and you will barely be able to see. Both of these boxes have the red on the under, on the lid. The red is fairly the same in my opinion. So we're gonna get the lids up out of the way. Inside the replicate box, we do have that information for you guys who want to know where these replicates come from. We're gonna take a look at the paper that's in the inside of the box. Replica paper to the left, retail to the right. Yeah, they're looking very, very similar. I don't see any major call outs. However, if you guys can spot something that I can't really see like that, please feel free and drop down below. Rep to the left, sewn it back. The splatter looks very, very similar. However, what I'm seeing on the retail is that we have more of an authentic type splatter. We have smaller speckles, and it just looked a little bit more, it just looked a little bit better placed on the shoe. However, the replicated does look good, but we have a slightly sizing difference where the dots on the fake are pretty much larger in scale. And these are both 8.5. Just keep that in mind. So the stitching on this back tab is a little bit tighter on the retail, a little bit less of a stitch that you can like actually see, whereas it looks a little bit more pop out and you can just tell where the stitching line is at because you can see it so clear on the replicated version. Other than that, the height of the two shoes are very similar. We usually see difference a lot of the time when it comes to these shoes. There's a slight difference of material on the back of the tongue. You can see the Air Jordan upside down on the rep, and you can see the Air Jordan upside down on the retail. There's a slight difference. They look a little bit more of a sheen to the fabric on the back of the tongue of the rep, in my opinion. We're gonna compare toe boxes. I like to compare toe boxes over here. Toe boxes is the most inconsistent things that usually be on these shoes when it comes to the mud guard. Right now, what I'm seeing is a little bit more flatter toe box, whereas the replicates, they got it down a little bit more sleeker. Now, like I said, that is an inconsistency. We might see some retails, like I got a lot of pairs of these white cement. Some of these pairs, even in like the same sizes, we see differences from the toe boxes and stuff like that. So that's really not really that big of a call out. Looking at both of the shoes from this angle though, and I'm not really seeing much of a difference with the shades of the gray. So I guess across the water, they pretty much got it down pat when it comes to the color of the shoes and the color of that gray. I'm seeing a little bit more of an inconsistency when it comes to the actual cement printed speckles on here. But like I said, that's going to vary whether if it's retail or both replicated. Stitching on the side, retail is at the top, replicated is at the bottom. The stitching you can see on the replicated, the stitching is not too much bigger. I mean, it's meat and all of that, but when you look at the retail, look how tight and small that stitching is versus the replicated. And I'm going to give you guys one more look at it. Okay, so let's get to the front. I'm looking at it on the camera. It's not looking like it's picking up as much, but the replicated laces are a little bit more sail, whereas the retail are a little bit more white. So looking at the Jumpman on both of the kicks on the tongue, to be honest, guys, I don't see much of a difference when it comes to the Jumpman on the tongue. I feel like Dandy, they got it down pat as far as that logo goes on the tongue of the shoe. On the bottom of the shoes, retail at the top, rep at the bottom. I'm seeing not much of a difference. Everything is looking pretty much identical in my opinion. Retail being on the top and the replicate being on the bottom. You can see a slight color difference inside the air unit, whereas is a little bit more yellow sail of a color on the bottom in the replicate, and you do have a little bit more of a clearer white look on the top on the retail. I am seeing like a slight SB type of shape from when we seen the Pine Greens release, whereas on the retail, they went just with like a newer style OG shape. As far as the hang tags, from what I'm seeing, we got the replicated version right here. Yes, this is the replicated, and we have the retail right here to my left. Hang tags are looking very similar. However, the main difference that I'm seeing is that on the retail, on the flip side, is a little bit more glossy. Actually, it's not just a little bit, it is glossy and is matte on the replicated. That's how that looks. So let's get into the inside of the kicks. So this is the insert to the replica, and on the top, this is the insert to the retail. Not much of a difference. I feel like that can vary depending on which store you go to and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna give them too much slack on that. Pulling out the insole of the replicated. So I think I did have an insole difference the last time. And I don't want to confuse myself. I won't confuse myself. So just looking at the insole, you can see that the replicated, the Nike branding on the insole is a tad bit sloppy. It looked like it's gonna rub off maybe like on the first wear, and you can see how neat it looks on the retail, both 8.5. On the back, we have both of them being white, but we have an AJ11 insole inside of the rep, and you can pretty much see it a little bit better. Get a good focus. And this is how it looks on the retail. It is some differences. I want you guys to take a good look at it so you guys can keep note of that, especially if you're legit checking these shoes and you don't want to get scammed on the third party market. So I'm going to take a look at the sizing label, and then we're going to take a look at the insole. This is how the size and label look on the retail. We got a LN3M factory, and we have production dates of 11/13/24 to February 19/25. Label looking pretty clean in the inside. So now looking at the label in the inside of the replicated, and it is looking slightly jankier. You can see where the ball is on there and just how it looks ironed in on there. And we have a production date from September 24th, 24 to 11/19/24. So it was a fairly shorter production time versus the production time on that particular retail that I just showed, but it will vary. So we do have the factory LN4M. Let me just go back and check. So yeah, we have a LN3M inside of the retail and a LN4M inside of the replica. We have the retail at the bottom. We have the replicated. So in terms of the inside, I'm not going to even lie, y'all. The inside is kind of looking identical on that footbed. Usually I'll see some stitching differences where one would be a different color, but seeing that it's slightly the same. It is a tad bit more sloppier in the inside of the replicated. However, that's just how it look. You know what I'm saying? And I want y'all to be careful when y'all go into the third party market so y'all can know what y'all looking at to be able to distinguish the real from the fake. Other than that, man, y'all drop y'all comments down below. Let me know what y'all think about these shoes. Is it something that you guys caught that I didn't catch? I'm just trying to bring y'all, the facts in on what's going on between the differences of these two shoes. And I let y'all see. Other than that, like I said, y'all let me know, man. If you ask me, there's a real close one. I feel like if you're not being careful out there in the third party markets, you can be gat. However, when you look at this video, though, you will be able to see clear differences from the real shoe to the fake shoe. Other than that, I love y'all. I'm out. Hit me up on the next one. Like, comment, subscribe.